I don't want to say anything too obvious here, but the further we get into the MCU, the more stuff happens. And the closer we get to the end of a phase, some Marvel projects find themselves in the uncomfortable position of having to tie up a ton of loose threads in service of a broader plot. With Fantastic Four First Steps and Avengers Doomsday just around the corner, technically ringing in a whole new phase, Captain America Brave New World seems to be in that exact situation.
Here I am.
The events that have led us here go all the way back to 2008 and are now scattered across Disney Plus series and movies alike, and not necessarily in a good way. So, here follows a messy account of all the loose ends that wound up on Sam Wilson's to-do list.
Wait for it.
There have been moments throughout Marvel's nearly 20 years of storytelling dominance that have more business to take care of, so to speak. Going all the way back to Iron Man 2, some MCU titles don't have the luxury of just telling their own story, and in recent years, you can argue that none of them have. But the need to tie up loose ends in any given project is more present than ever in Marvel films, and it gets more complicated the more characters bob and weave through the canon.
What happened?
We were hoping you could tell us.
Sam Wilson's first solo outing as the official Captain America seems to be one of those projects that drew the short straw, with more than a little thread pulling to do. Sam's road to wielding the shield is the straightest path to the events of Brave New World. First appearing in 2014's The Winter Soldier while running slower than Steve Rogers would like, Sam started his MCU tenure as a VA counselor, helping veterans readjust to life back at home. After proving himself helping to root Hydra out of S.H.I.E.L.D., he quickly became Steve's most trusted right hand. Left, on your left, is the side he's always running. Anyway, it doesn't matter. By the time Age of Ultron's final moments rolled around, Falcon was a full-fledged Avenger. Civil War finds him so entrenched, he's heading off to prison with the rest of Team Cap, and this is where the path to Brave New World gets well and truly muddy. Before he becomes Captain America, Sam meets Thaddeus Ross in Civil War at the Avengers compound, and likely again while being incarcerated at the Raft, gets reluctantly chummy with Bucky, and very briefly crosses paths with Sharon Carter before going on the run with Team Cap all the way through the events of Infinity War, where he joins the battle against Thanos in Wakanda only to be dusted, just kinda not exist for 5 years, and then come back to battle Thanos again, but this time on the winning team. Cut to Old Man Rogers back from his adventures, keeping Hulk's promise to the Ancient One, and Sam gets a shiny new shield that came from somewhere in the past, maybe? Or an alternate timeline? I mean, the original one was for sure chopped in half. Maybe we'll finally find out where that shield came from. Or maybe not.
How does it feel? Like it's someone else's.
But the number of people that know Sam at this point is absurd, and that's not even including the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where he finally took on the mantle of Captain America after a lot of hemming and hawing. So, where Brave New World open questions are concerned, let's start there. We loved Bucky and Sam's frenemy energy in Civil War, and it was nice to see the two former partners of Captain America bond in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So, on the one hand, it's kind of surprising that Bucky isn't back for Brave New World. He has been in every other Cap movie to date after all, but then again, it's a big ol' Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he has other places to be. Namely, James Buchanan, Bucky Barnes, is audience bait on another big tentpole movie for Kevin Feige. Thunderbolts comes out in May, where Bucky will be hanging out with a team of non-Avengers that includes Yelena Belova, Red Guardian, US Agent, Taskmaster, Ghost, Sentry, and Selena Meyer. Don't worry though, I'm sure he and Sam will get to nod steelily, if not lovingly, at each other in Avengers Secret Wars. Carl Lumbly's Isaiah Bradley has one of the grimmest backstories in the MCU. A Korean War vet, he and other African American soldiers were experimented on in an attempt to recreate the super soldier serum that had turned Steve Rogers into Captain America. Though these efforts led to the deaths of most of his comrades, Bradley survived and was imprisoned by his own government for decades. Eventually, he was freed, and it was in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier that we learned of his story. Now, in the trailers for Brave New World, Isaiah appears to have fallen under the control of another malevolent force as he attempts to assassinate Harrison Ford's President Ross. Was he Winter Soldiered also, in a sense? He's clearly not doing this by his own accord, but who is controlling him and why do they want Ross dead. Meanwhile, Bradley has a grandson named Eli in the comics. Eli is also a member of the Young Avengers and goes by the codename Patriot. Is it possible that he has the super soldier serum coursing through his veins? The MCU sure has been setting up the Young Avengers for a long time now, so if they ever pull the trigger on it, Eli is ready and waiting for the call. The once flirty neighbor in Winter Soldier, turned ally and love interest in Civil War, turned speculative homewrecker in an interview we did with Haley Atwell back in 2019.
Words were said, voices may have risen.
Sharon Carter was a straight-up villain in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Presumably, she was mad at the government for almost a decade of that fugitive life. The former Agent 13 refashioned herself into the power broker for reasons that remained mostly off-screen. She wrapped up her time on the show clearly up to no good and planning to use her fresh pardon for fresh crimes. The loose end factor here is twofold. Why did she, dear perfect Peggy Carter's niece, go so bad? And what would it take for her to go good again? She was down to sell super soldier serum to the highest bidder in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And jury is still out on if she shows up in Brave New World at all. It's just as likely happening as it is not. For playing such a big part in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this is a mess that might just stay messy though. But who knows? Maybe she's behind whatever serum gave the president his new look. Speaking of, finally getting past Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but I suppose in the wrong direction, when was the last time we actually saw this guy on screen? Chronologically speaking. Of course, he was the brutish military man, antagonist, and would-be father-in-law to Bruce Banner way back when he looked like Edward Norton, and Ross looked like the late William Hurt. He subsequently popped up only here and there, most notably as a reminder that the Avengers had rules to follow just like everybody else in Civil War. He chased Natasha Romanoff for a while in the years after the film, but only saw her again on a hologram conference call during Infinity War. He was also at Tony Stark's funeral in Endgame, which, by our count, was his most recent in-universe appearance. In the meantime, clearly, he's had his sights on politics. President Matthew Ellis held the office for at least 2 terms in the present-tense Marvel films. Dermot Mulroney's President Ritson was commander-in-chief for at least a secret invasion amount of time, but somewhere in there, old Thunderbolt Ross entered the political thicket as well, and got, or is about to get, Red Hulked along the way.
Since when were they red?
His MCU origins in The Incredible Hulk leave plenty of options as to the how and when and why, one of which is, well, I guess it's safe to assume he still has a daughter. We've had no shortage of Hulk in the MCU, and even no shortage of Hulk romance in the MCU. The dude's got a kid and everything now. But do you know who it seems has been completely and rudely forgotten about? His original flame, Betty Ross. I hope they broke up properly at some point. They kind of were already broken up the last and first time we saw Betty back in 2008's The Incredible Hulk. She had another boyfriend and everything, but we all know that dude was more of a spare, and Bruce just kind of vanished, so there can't have been any closure worth a damn, and Bruce was the only Hulk for her, and I just want Betty to be happy, is all. Anyway, Liv Tyler is said to be returning for Brave New World, so stay tuned there. And while we're talking about 17-year-old MCU movies, Tim Blake Nelson's Samuel Stearns, aka Hulk villain The Leader, is also set to make his return in the film. We've got a whole other video up about this right now, so just go check that out. One of the knocks of the MCU since Eternals came out in 2021 is that there's still a giant goddamn hand popping out of the ocean. It's the kind of mind-shattering the world doesn't make sense anymore thing that people start religions over, and it's gotten barely a mention in the years since, until now. Based on the trailers, it seems that Marvel is finally revisiting the thing in Brave New World, and it could have a big old nerdy implication for the MCU. Basically, the hand belongs to the cosmic being known as Tiamut, who was, get this, planted by the Celestials millions of years ago as a seed in the center of the Earth. There he grew, feeding off the energy of the human race, and was meant to one day emerge in a not entirely imaginative event called the Emergence, destroying the Earth along the way. This actually happened in an alternate universe on What If, but the Eternals realized that this was kind of a sucky thing to do, and so they stopped the Celestial mid-emerge, hence giant hand and head sticking out of the Indian Ocean. And hence that age-old Google search term, why there is a giant statue of a man sticking out of the ocean. And yes, we also have an explainer on that on IGN. As for why Marvel is finally returning to all this, as revealed at Comic-Con last summer, it turns out that the Tiamut's body is the source of none other than that precious and super fake Marvel metal alloy known as adamantium. That moment in the Brave New World trailers when President Ross is almost assassinated, apparently he's announcing the adamantium that was recovered from the dead Celestial. Adamantium, of course, is bonded to Wolverine's skeleton and claws, and the MCU couldn't use it in the past because the X-Men movie rights were tied up at Fox. But not anymore. As Kevin Feige himself said at Comic-Con,
"Just when I think my dream of a nerdy life can't get any more complete, I hear Harrison Ford say adamantium."
The end of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a big ol' inspirational speech. Captain Wilson encouraging the leaders of the Global Repatriation Council to show some compassion. And Cap himself admitted that there are no easy answers to everybody that was blipped only to return and find other people living in their homes and loved ones having moved on or daughters being like 10 years older somehow instead of just the 5 that had gone by. But also, man, none of the other movies seem to have gotten the message. There have been almost 20 projects that take place chronologically after The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and it seems as though Marvel has moved well past being interested in the repercussions of the blip. Like Sharon Carter, the Flag Smashers, and Baron Zemo, don't forget about Baron Zemo, it will be interesting to see if Brave New World can live up to being a sequel to The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is to say, can Captain America Brave New World be a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, The Winter Soldier, Eternals, and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, while also answering lingering questions from 3 of the 4 previous Avengers movies? Like we said, it's a mess out there. Let us know what you think of the messy Marvel timeline. Does Brave New World have a chance at cleaning it up? Talk to us about it in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.